4 years after endorsing a policy of reaching net zero emissions, a newly unmuzzled National Party, now in opposition, has walked away.
We continue to believe that we need to reduce emissions, but we've got to do it in a better, fairer, cheaper way for all Australians.
Like the proverbial tail wagging the dog, the junior coalition partner is pushing the majority party to follow suit, and it's splitting Liberals between those who want to dump net zero.
The only thing we're on track for is impoverishing our great country for no gain to the global climate.
The crippling costs, particularly in regional communities, mean that so many Australians are suffering. So these policies are not working. Australians can see it. The National Party have called this out.
And those seeking a compromise with the Nationals that would keep net zero alive, but perhaps push out the 2050 target date.
Paris Agreement says this century, China and India are looking at 2060, 2070. I mean, why wouldn't we be flexible as long as we stay inside the treaty?
The one thing that there is absolutely universal agreement on is that we have a responsibility to make sure that we play our role in emissions reduction.
Turning your back on net zero doesn't mean the problem of climate change goes away.
The ongoing civil war on climate policy once again threatening to split the coalition. Shadow frontbencher Dave Sharma saying if the two sides can't agree, they will need to consider the future of the coalition.
Do you think it's okay to break up again?
Well, I think our country's always best served by a strong coalition government. We've seen that for the entirety that the Liberal Party's been in existence, but it's not at any cost.
The National Party's decision over the weekend to jettison its 2021 policy, brokered by then leader Barnaby Joyce, threatens to consume Susan Lee's leadership. There's growing speculation she will dump years of personal support for stronger climate action, if only to head off a challenge to her authority from the Liberal Party's Conservative wing. But it's a move, one senior Liberal warned 7:30, that could shatter her support among moderates who voted for her over Angus Taylor and lead to an exodus from the shadow cabinet. It's understood a decision will be made within weeks. In the meantime, she's leaving everyone guessing.
I'm looking forward to the work that will happen between now and the Liberal Party's position becoming known, and then us sitting down together as two mature parties.
Lee's difficulty, as she stumbles under the growing weight of another disastrous news poll, is that if she reneges on net zero, she'll be seen as following the junior partner's lead and embracing a Nationals plan that would see coal restored as a major source of future power in the grid, helped by government subsidies.
It's the best technology. Building a Healy coal-fired power station brings down its emissions. You do realise that, and that's before you even think about carbon capture storage. If you add that as an additionality.
The Nationals' decision to dump net zero relies on a report by the Page Research Centre think tank, chaired by former leader John Anderson. It argues coal is among the cheapest sources of power, citing research commissioned by Coal Australia, a Queensland-based lobby group.
If you're outsourcing your environment and climate policy to the coal industry, you'll fall in a very long way. The role of political parties is to govern in the national interest, not for vested interests. And today we're seeing a complete betrayal of the Australian community, with the coal industry prevailing over the interests of Australians.
They will pay a price from natural disasters and falling farm productivity, and that will be the price of a betrayal by those who represent farmers, those who are meant to represent farmers in regional Australia, but who just do not.
David Littleproud, how are you?
The re-embrace of coal by David Littleproud follows years of strong support for renewables, often spruiking the benefits for his Western Queensland electorate.
This is an exciting time for the people of Maranoa in diversifying our economic base and ensuring that we actually also get a sensible energy policy that will put downward pressure on electricity costs for people right across this country, while also meeting our international standards.
And then backing in the decision to sign up to net zero during the Morrison government.
Our party room respectfully got to a position of securing but also growing regional jobs into the future, facing up to our international commitments but making sure we have the safeguards and the protections there.
With Littleproud's Nationals moving to bury all trace of a net zero target, sources have told 7:30 it's a matter of time before Lee's Liberals also declare those words are dead, a stance that will surely test the Liberal Party's ability to regain metropolitan seats.
I think this should be resolved this year. I think this is damaging our ability to hold the government to account.
No serious political party that wants to be a party of government can ignore facts, can ignore science. And walking away from net zero is doing exactly that.
David Littleproud is the leader of the Nationals. David Littleproud, welcome to 7:30.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Will you remain in coalition with the Liberals if they keep their commitment to net zero by 2050?
Well, look, we'll work through and won't preempt where the Liberal Party gets to. We'll give the time and the space to create the environment for them to get to a position. And then when they get to that position, as we've agreed between Susan Lee and myself, that we'll work constructively to try to get common ground. And that's the ethos that I'm going to take into wherever the Liberal Party gets to. We went through a long-standing process starting back in June to get to the position we have. And what I need to do is to show leadership in allowing them to get to their position and not preempt or make commentary along the way, because it won't help with respect to the position they may get.
Does it matter to you that your decision puts enormous pressure on Susan Lee's leadership of the Liberal Party?
No, we're both sovereign parties that have the right, as we articulated after.
Sorry, David. When you say no, do you mean that's right? It doesn't matter that it puts enormous pressure on Susan Lee?
No, it doesn't put pressure on Susan Lee because she leads her own sovereign party as I lead mine, and we made that determination after the election that we both had the right to lead our parties, to review the process and to review the policy itself. And to come to a conclusion, then once that conclusion was met, that we would try to work together to get to a consensus. That's the process that we agreed to after the election, and that's the one that we've stuck to.
You may well have agreed to it, but it's not credible, is it, to claim that this puts no pressure on Susan Lee's leadership of the Liberal Party, no pressure on the Liberal Party. That's simply not true, is it?
Well, I think that's your analysis, and I respect your analysis. The reality is I'm very relaxed to allow the Liberal Party to get to their position. We've been able to go through a process that got to a juncture where we could make a decision. Now, what I need to do is to continue not to commentate, but to allow them to be able to get to a position, and whatever that is, they'll do that with the fierce determination of the individuals within their room to get to that position, separate or in conjunction with the National Party.
Well, would you accept this much, that this decision of yours makes it harder for Liberals to win back particularly urban or suburban seats at the next election?
No, because if you look at the policy that we've articulated, is that we still want to reduce emissions. It goes to the very heart. What we want to do is we believe that there's a cheaper, better, fairer way to reduce emissions, to address climate change, and to make sure that we can address affordability of energy for households and for business, and making sure that we don't just try to mitigate emissions, but also look to adaptation here in Australia to make sure that we have a healthy and stronger climate that can adapt. And making sure that we continue to do our fair share internationally, pegging ourselves to emissions around the world. So we're saying to people, whether you live in a capital city or whether you live in regional Australia, there is an alternative to net zero that Labor is putting forward. We can have a different alternative that we should explore and have a conversation. That's the political leadership that the National Party put forward yesterday.
Let me ask you this question. Why do you think the Liberals are tanking so badly in opinion polls right now?
Well, I think what we've got to understand is that we've got to be clear to the Australian people that we're focused on them and the challenges that they face. When there's Australians tonight that won't be able to put dinner on the table, in fact, St Vincent de Paul today released a report that showed nearly a third of Australians won't be able to put dinner on the table tonight. We need to focus on the cause and what we can do to address that. And when we're not focused on that, and we're not focused on the solutions, then of course people are going to become disillusioned.
Does that mean, David Littleproud, that you think that the Liberal Party's adherence to net zero to this point is one of the main drivers of their unpopularity in the polls?
No, and I think it's important to understand we're a coalition. and we do this together. The polls
well,
reflect...
you haven't done it together, have you? Because you've gone out on your own and declared your policy in opposition to net zero by 2050 ahead of the Liberal Party. So that's not doing it together. No,
with respect, the agreed principle after the election was that both parties would individually review their policy on net zero and come back after they've completed that and respect one another and wait for whoever was unable to get to the position first and then work constructively. And that's the process that we'll adhere to. And when the Liberal Party gets to their position, we've decided around a course of action post that to ensure that we constructively work towards the opportunity to get to consensus. And I think that's the structure and process that's been put in place since the election. That's what I want to continue to do and make sure that we say to Australians we're serious about reducing emissions. But there's not just one way to do it. There is a cheaper, fairer, better way to do it. How many of your colleagues wanted to go further than abandoning net zero and exit the Paris Agreement altogether? Well, we didn't even get to a decision on Paris because what that is a commitment to continue to reduce emissions. It's a framework and saying that we seriously believe in reducing emissions. What net zero by 2050 is effectively the mechanics to get there. And what we're saying is there's different mechanics that can be looked at here in Australia that isn't going to put the enormous burden on Australian families and on industries. And you want to ask the people of Tomago, the families of Tomago tonight, about why they won't have job security. Let me ask you, just before I run out of time, because obviously the Tomago question is a complicated one, but just answer this if you would. How will slowing down the renewables rollout, pushing more very expensive coal and gas into the system, bring down energy prices? Well, what we're saying is that you should put all the solutions on the table, including nuclear, in the short term, whatever the transition may be. The most expensive form of energy in the world at the moment. So how does coal, gas and nuclear, does coal, gas and nuclear make energy prices in Australia come down when they are more expensive than renewables? No, Sarah, that's not necessarily true, and I think it's important we work through the facts on this. But what we also need to do is, whatever the transition is that we need, and it's obvious that we're going to have to sweat out coal-fired assets longer. Even the Queensland Government has acknowledged that. So why wouldn't we take a technology-agnostic approach to it, extend the capacity investment scheme to be able to support and bring equilibrium to energy generation and to try and increase whatever generation we've got, and actually get our energy operator to prioritise the most affordable source of energy, not the one that prioritises our 2030 target, interim target. Those are simple measures that we can implement today that would put downward pressure on energy bills for Australians today. So those are the practical solutions we brought forward, and saying that you can't run an economy in an all renewables approach. There's no country that has done it. In fact, Portugal and Spain had a go. They got to 77%. They lost their grid. You look at Tomago today. They can't do it on renewable energy. You need baseload power. Those are the physics that we can't run away from. And what we need to do is have sensible solutions that calmly work through this. All right. Well, David Littleproud, there's a whole series of statements there that really should require fact checks on the run. I can't do all of them, so next time maybe we'll get into some of that detail. In the meantime, thank you very much indeed for joining us on The Politics today. Thanks for having me.